Have you ever wished you could reach back through time and change just one response? One single moment when you chose wrong without knowing the weight of your choice. It's just a sentence. 4 small words spoken on an ordinary Tuesday morning that I would give anything to take back. But since that day, those words have become the heaviest burden I carry. My name is Ryan, I'm 35, and this begins on a morning like any other, the kind where routine numbs you to the significance of small interactions. The kind where coffee is more important than conversation, where deadlines outweigh connection. The kind you'd never mark as important until it becomes the moment everything changed. Emma and I had been married for 7 years. High school sweethearts who'd grown up together, grown into ourselves together. She was an elementary school art teacher, brightening young lives with color and creativity. I was climbing the corporate ladder at a tech firm, each rung demanding more of my time and attention. We'd been existing in parallel lately, sharing a home, a bed, a life, but somehow missing each other in the spaces between. Ships passing in the night, my mother would have called it, but I told myself it was just a busy season, that we'd reconnect when the big project was finished, when the school year ended, when we finally took that vacation we kept postponing. That Tuesday in April started like any other. Alarm at 6 a.m., shower, coffee brewing while I checked emails that had accumulated overnight. Emma in her morning routine, yoga, breakfast, outfit selection for the day. The familiar choreography of 2 people who knew how to move around each other without colliding. I was at the kitchen island, laptop open, coffee in hand, already fielding messages from the Singapore team when Emma appeared in the doorway. She was wearing the yellow dress I'd always loved, her dark hair pulled back in a loose braid. Something about her seemed different that morning. A stillness, a careful way she held herself. "Morning," I said without looking up, fingers flying across the keyboard to answer questions that seemed so urgent then. "Morning," she replied, pouring herself coffee. She stood across from me at the island, not sitting down, just watching me for a moment in silence. I could feel her gaze, but the red flags on my inbox demanded attention. 3 weeks away from product launch and nothing could wait. At least that's what I believed then. "Ryan," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. "Can we talk for a second?" I glanced at my watch. 7:15. Meeting at 8 SU. 40-minute commute. Emails still unanswered. "Not now," I replied, eyes already back on the screen. "Tonight, maybe?" "I'm swamped this morning." She didn't respond immediately. In the silence that followed, I should have looked up. I should have noticed the way her hands tightened around her coffee mug. I should have seen what was written on her face. But I didn't. "Okay," she said finally. "Tonight." She set her mug down, still full, leaned across the island and kissed my cheek. Her lips lingered a moment longer than usual against my skin. "I love you," she said. "Love you too," I responded automatically, the way you say bless you when someone sneezes. A reflex, not a conscious thought. She picked up her bag and keys. "Have a good day," she called from the entryway. "You too," I replied, already focused on an emergency email from the product team. The front door closed with a soft click. That was the last time I heard her voice. I don't remember much about the rest of that morning. Meetings blurred together, presentations, conference calls, lunch eaten at my desk while reviewing code. Normal day, ordinary hours passing without consequence. At 2:37 p.m., my administrative assistant knocked on my office door. Her face wore an expression I'd never seen before. "Ryan," she said, voice strained, "you need to step out. Your brother-in-law's on the phone. He says it's urgent." Something cold settled in my stomach as I followed her to the reception area. I remember the bizarre clarity of certain details. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the lingering smell of someone's microwaved lunch, the exact shade of blue of the phone she handed me. "Hello?" I said. "Ryan." Emma's brother David's voice broke on my name. "Where are you?" "At work." "What's wrong?" "It's Emma," he said, and something in his tone made the world tilt sideways. "There's been an accident." The next hours exist in my memory as fragments. Driving to the hospital with no memory of leaving the office. The antiseptic smell of the emergency room. David's face, pale and shocked. The doctor's gentle voice explaining what had happened. Words that didn't make sense together. Intersection, truck, impact, instantaneous. "She didn't suffer," the doctor said, as if that was supposed to bring comfort. But all I could think was, she asked for a second. Just 1 second. And I said no. I learned later that Emma had been on her way to a doctor's appointment, an appointment she hadn't mentioned to me, an appointment to confirm what she had suspected for nearly 2 weeks. When they gave me her personal effects in a clear plastic bag, I found the small white stick with its unmistakable double pink lines hidden carefully in her purse. She had been trying to tell me we were going to have a baby, the child we'd been talking about for years, waiting for the right time, and I had been too busy to listen. The days that followed were a blur of arrangements and decisions no one should have to make at 35. What she would wear for eternity, who would speak at the service, which photos to display, what songs to play. I moved through it all like an automaton, functioning but not truly present. It wasn't until I was alone in our home afterwards, surrounded by evidence of her everywhere. Her coffee mug still in the sink, her book still on the nightstand with the bookmark in place, her yellow dress hanging in the closet, that the full weight of it all came crashing down. "Can we talk for a second?" I would give anything now to go back to that moment, to close my laptop, to look into her eyes, to say, "Yes, of course, what is it?" To hear the joy in her voice as she shared the news that would have changed our lives in an entirely different way. But time doesn't bend to regret. Moments once past can't be reclaimed. I found myself sitting at the kitchen island where we'd had our last exchange, staring at the space where she had stood. I could almost see her there, coffee mug in hand, waiting for me to look up. On impulse, I opened my laptop, not to check email this time, but to look at our photo stream. I scrolled back through years of images, our wedding day, hiking trips, holiday gatherings, ordinary selfies taken on ordinary days. Evidence of a life shared, of moments witnessed and preserved. The most recent photo had been taken just 3 days before that Tuesday. We were at her parents' house for Sunday dinner, and her mother had insisted on a picture of us in the garden. I had my arm around Emma's shoulders. She was looking up at me with an expression I hadn't noticed at the time, a mixture of love and anticipation, of knowing something wonderful that I didn't yet know. Had she already suspected then? Had she been waiting for the right moment to tell me? How many opportunities had I missed to be present, to notice, to listen? On the desk in our home office, I found her planner. Emma was old school that way. She preferred paper to digital calendars, liked the feel of writing things down by hand. Flipping to that Tuesday, I saw the doctor's appointment noted at 10 a.m., and below it in her neat handwriting, "Tell Ryan about baby." She had planned it, had perhaps rehearsed the words, had chosen that yellow dress deliberately because she knew I loved it, had gathered her courage to share news that would change everything. And I had said, "Not now." That night, I slept on her side of the bed, face pressed into her pillow, still carrying the faint scent of her shampoo. I dreamed of alternate universes where I made different choices, where I looked up from my screen, where I said yes instead of no, where she walked out our door and returned hours later glowing with confirmed news, where we celebrated together, made plans, dreamed of the future. But morning always brings reality crashing back, and the reality was that Emma was gone, along with the child I hadn't known we were expecting, all because I couldn't spare a second when it mattered most. Her parents came over the next day to help sort through her things, a task both necessary and impossible. Her mother stood in Emma's closet, running her hands over the clothes hanging there, occasionally bringing a sleeve or collar to her face. "She called me Monday night," her mother said suddenly, breaking the heavy silence. She was so excited about the baby, nervous about how to tell you with all the pressure you've been under at work. I leaned against the doorframe, legs suddenly unsteady. She said she was going to tell you Tuesday morning, she continued, that she couldn't keep the secret any longer. Her voice broke. Did she get to tell you, Ryan? Did she get to see your face when you found out? The truth stuck in my throat. How could I tell this grieving mother that I had been too busy for her daughter's joy, that I had squandered what turned out to be our final moments together? But my silence was answer enough. "Oh, Ryan," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. That night, after they had gone, I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by half-filled boxes of Emma's belongings. The physical evidence of a life suddenly interrupted. Books she would never finish reading, art supplies waiting for projects never started, winter boots she had just purchased on sale, thinking ahead to a season she would never see. On the coffee table lay her sketchbook. Emma was always drawing, quick sketches of her students, detailed studies of objects that caught her eye, playful cartoons that made me laugh. I hadn't looked through this most recent book yet. With trembling hands, I opened it. Most of the pages contained familiar subjects, landscapes from our weekend hikes, still lifes of objects around our home, portraits of friends and family. But the final pages held something different, sketches of nursery designs, a crib by a window, a rocking chair, a mobile hanging above a changing table, and on the very last page she had filled a simple sketch of a man holding a baby. My face rendered with the loving attention of someone who had memorized every line and plane, and in my arms a tiny bundle, face turned up toward mine. Beneath it she had written, "Ryan and baby Stevens, coming November 2023. The careful planning, the quiet joy she had been carrying alone, the future she had already begun to envision and create. All of it whispered away with 4 careless words. Not now." I closed the sketchbook and held it against my chest, finally allowing the tears to come in earnest. Tears for Emma, for our unborn child. For all the seconds I had refused when they were offered, never knowing they were numbered. Can we talk for a second? If only I had known it was her last one. It's been 11 months since that April morning. 11 months of carrying those 4 words with me, of hearing them echo in quiet moments, of imagining all the different ways that day could have unfolded if I had simply looked up from my screen. Winter has arrived again, blanketing the world in stillness. Emma loved winter, the first snow, holiday lights, evenings by the fireplace with mugs of hot chocolate. Last year, we had talked about possibly heading to her parents' cabin for Christmas. Next year for sure, we'd said, not knowing there would be no next year for us. The world has continued turning in her absence. I've returned to work, though at a different company with more reasonable hours. I've moved to a smaller apartment, unable to bear the echoing spaces of our home without her. I've learned to cook for one, to sleep alone, to exist in a life I never planned for. On the surface, I function, but inside I carry the weight of "not now" everywhere I go. My sister noticed the change in me first. "You never say no to anyone anymore," she observed over coffee one Sunday. "Not to social invitations, not to requests for help, not even to those pushy charity solicitors who call during dinner." I shrugged, uncomfortable with her perception. "I'm trying to be more present. There's present, and then there's being unable to set boundaries," she said gently. "Emma wouldn't want you to disappear into everyone else's needs. But how could I explain that every time I consider saying no, I hear Emma's voice asking for a second of my time, that I'm terrified of missing another crucial moment, of causing more irreparable damage through inattention? I've become hypervigilant about other people's attempts to connect. I answer every call, respond to every text immediately. I listen with complete focus during conversations, watching for subtle cues in expression or tone. I never ever tell anyone, "not now," when they want to talk. My therapist, yes, I started seeing one, calls it a trauma response. She says I'm trying to control the uncontrollable, to prevent a tragedy that has already happened from happening again in a different form. You couldn't have known, she reminds me in every session. There was no way you could have anticipated what would happen. Intellectually, I understand this, but knowledge doesn't erase the feeling that I failed Emma when it mattered most. That if I had been paying attention, I might have noticed something in her expression that morning. That I might have had a chance to tell her how much I loved her, how excited I would have been about our child, how she was always more important than any email or meeting. The hardest days are the milestone dates, the day we would have announced the pregnancy to friends and family, the day we might have learned the baby's gender, the due date in November when our child would have arrived, transforming us from couple to family. That day, November 17th, I took off work and drove to Emma's favorite place, a small botanical garden where we'd spent countless weekends. It was cold, the gardens mostly dormant for winter, but the greenhouse was open, warm and humid and full of life. I sat on a bench surrounded by tropical plants, closed my eyes and spoke to them both in my mind. To Emma and the child we never got to meet. I told them about my year, about how much I missed her laugh, her touch, the way she saw beauty in ordinary things, about how I imagined our baby might have had her dark hair and artistic talent, about how sorry I was for all the moments I'd missed while they were here, and all the moments I would miss now that they were gone. I would give anything for one more second, I whispered to the empty greenhouse. Just one more chance to say yes instead of no. On my way out, I stopped in the gift shop and purchased a small crystal sun catcher, the kind Emma used to hang in our kitchen window to catch the morning light and scatter rainbows across the walls. I hung it in my new apartment that evening, a small memorial that only I would understand. Last month, I was cleaning out the last box of items from our old home, things I hadn't been able to face sorting through until now. At the bottom, tucked inside one of Emma's art books, I found an envelope with my name written on it in her handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it, wondering when she had written it, what occasion it had been meant for. Inside was a card with a simple watercolor painting on the front. Emma's work, a sunrise over the mountains we had visited on our 5th anniversary. Inside, her familiar handwriting filled the space. Ryan, by the time you read this, you'll know our biggest adventure yet is about to begin. I've suspected for almost 2 weeks now, but wanted to be sure before I shared the news. I'm writing this the night before my doctor's appointment, too excited to sleep. I know things have been distant between us lately. We've both been caught up in our separate worlds, missing each other in the spaces between. But this news feels like a bridge back to each other, a reminder of what matters most. I keep imagining your face when I tell you. Will you be shocked, excited, a little scared? I'm all three. I've rehearsed the words a dozen different ways, but I think I'll just ask for a moment of your time tomorrow morning and simply say it. We're having a baby. Whatever comes next for us, I want you to know I've never doubted us. Even in our busiest, most disconnected times, I've always known we would find our way back to each other. This baby is our new beginning. All my love, Emma. I sat on the floor of my apartment, letter in hand, tears streaming down my face. All this time, I had imagined her frustration with me that morning, her disappointment when I brushed her off. But this letter revealed a different truth. Her enduring hope, her certainty that we would reconnect, her confidence in our love despite the distance that had grown between us. She had been offering me not just news that morning, but reconciliation, a way back to each other, a new beginning. And I had said, not now. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept rereading her letter, tracing my fingers over her handwriting, trying to absorb some essence of her from the paper she had touched. Around 3 a.m., I got up and went to the kitchen, making myself a cup of the herbal tea Emma used to drink when she couldn't sleep. As I waited for the kettle to boil, I noticed the rainbow prisms from the sun catcher scattered across my kitchen wall, visible even in the dim light from the stove hood. impossible rainbows in the middle of the night. I touched one of the colored spots of light, half expecting it to disappear beneath my finger, but it remained steadfast, painting my skin with its hue. In that moment, something shifted inside me, not a release of grief, which I knew would remain forever, but a change in its texture, a realization that Emma's last gift to me hadn't been meant as a burden of regret, but as an invitation to live differently. I took her letter and sat by the window, watching as moonlight filtered through the crystal, creating those impossible rainbows. And I began to write back to her, words she would never read, but that I needed to say. Emma, I've been living in the not now for almost a year, caught between the moment I lost you and the future we'll never have. I've been punishing myself for that final exchange, for all the times I chose work over presence, deadlines over connection. But tonight, seeing these rainbows in the darkness, I'm reminded of how you always found beauty where no one else thought to look, how you turned ordinary moments into art, how you never gave up on us, even when we were drifting. I can't go back and change my answer that morning. I can't reclaim that second I refused to give you. But I can honor what you were offering, a new beginning. I can choose to live as if every second matters, because it does. I can carry forward the love you had for me and the love I should have shown more often to you. I'm still learning how to live in a world without you in it, but I promise that from now on, when life offers me a moment of connection, I will say yes. I will be present. I will remember the lesson you taught me with your last question. Thank you for loving me, even when I couldn't see past my screen. Thank you for believing in us, even when we were lost. Thank you for the gift you were trying to share, not just the baby, but the chance to find each other again. I miss you. I love you. I remember you. Always, Ryan. As dawn broke, painting the sky with the colors of Emma's favorite hour, I folded both letters together and placed them in the box where I keep her sketchbook. Not hidden away like a painful secret anymore, but preserved as a reminder of what matters most. The grief hasn't disappeared. The regret still visits in quiet moments. I still wake sometimes with her voice in my ears, asking for just a second of my time. But now, when I hear those words, they don't just remind me of what I lost, they remind me of how to live. I've started volunteering at the elementary school where Emma taught, helping with their after-school art program. Her former students share stories about her that make me laugh and cry at the same time. Through their memories, I see new facets of the woman I loved. Her patience, her creativity, the way she made each child feel specially seen. Last week, a little girl tugged on my sleeve as I was helping distribute supplies. "Mr. Ryan," she said, her voice small but determined, "can we talk for a second?" Time seemed to stop. Those words, the same words that haunt my memories. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then I set down the papers I was holding, knelt to her level, and looked directly into her eyes. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and sure. "We can talk for as long as you need." She just wanted to show me the drawing she'd made of her family. A simple request, an ordinary moment. But as I admired her work, giving her my complete attention, I felt something healing inside me. Emma would never get the response she deserved that April morning. Our child would never draw pictures for me to admire. Those seconds are gone forever, but other seconds keep arriving, offering new chances to be present, to connect, to say yes instead of no. In the end, that's what Emma's final question gave me. Not just unbearable regret, but eventually, painfully, a new way of measuring the value of time. A reminder that some seconds matter more than we can possibly know in the moment. So if someone asks you for a second of your time today, consider saying yes. Your inbox will wait. Your meeting can start a minute late. Your phone can stay face down for a moment. Because sometimes, though we don't realize it, we're being offered something precious, a confidence, a joy, a connection, a chance to be fully present for someone who needs us. And some seconds, once refused, never come again.